Digital threats evolve rapidly, making it difficult for security teams to keep pace. Tying security automation and orchestration is different from traditional SOAR. It allows teams to move faster and make better decisions in real time. With Tynes, analysts and engineers have everything they need to automate the processes they're closest to, regardless of complexity. Built by security practitioners for security practitioners, Tynes powers mission-critical security workflows at McKesson, Canva, and Mars. Start building for free at securityweekly.com/Tynes. In 2024, the future of identity, security, and digital transformation converges at Octane, hosted by Okta. On October 15th through 17th, join the brightest minds in tech and business in Las Vegas or online as they explore groundbreaking innovations and unveil the latest Okta solutions to keep your organization secure, connected, and ahead of the curve. Whether you're a developer, an IT or security leader, or visionary, Octane is your gateway to transforming tomorrow, today. Security Weekly listeners need only pay $100 for a full conference pass to Octane, and you can do so by using the discount code OKTNSC24 at securityweekly.com/Octane2024. Stream the event live on okta.com/Octane. Welcome back to Enterprise Security Weekly. If you're watching this podcast on YouTube, please give us a like, subscribe, and leave us a comment to let us know what you think, or just that you're watching. Just leave a hi. Just wave. Do you like the changes I've been making to the news segment? Do you like the stories we've been covering? Are we missing stuff you're interested in? Is there a story you're eager to hear us discuss? Let us know in the comments. All right, now for the Enterprise Security Weekly news, we now have Mr. Tyler Shields with us. Hello, Tyler.
Hey, Adrian. Good to be here.
And so sadly, Tyler, this is you got a couple more of these with us, and then you're off onto a new gig.
I am a bit of a new adventure. We're not disclosing any information quite yet. Maybe in a week or two.
He's going to be a circus clown. I did it.
Yes,
I disclosed
I'm going to put on a pink nose or an orange nose with some white makeup.
Do we need to cut that? Is it okay for me to mention that you're making a move?
Yeah, it's fine. Just as long as we keep it like that.
Okay, cool.
Cool.
All right, moving on. You can check out securityweekly.com/ESW377 if you want to check out the stories that we're talking about today, or read my pithy comments about the stories. Let's see, starting here with funding, we've got a few rounds of series, kind of smallish, but Series C funding. I don't recall if these are down rounds. I haven't looked for these companies, but it's kind of interesting. I'm seeing a lot of BaaS vendors who are kind of rebranding, pivoting. Like a lot of them are now CTEM, PICUS or PICUS. I forget how you're supposed to say it. But they were once breach and attack simulation, and now they're adversarial exposure validation.
I don't even know where to begin to comment on that, because it's just a reinvention. It's just a new term. It's reinvention, the same stuff that's probably maybe on its fourth iteration. You could probably trace this all the way back to DAST as its original roots, turned PTAS, turned CTEM, turned BaaS, or BaaS turned CTEM. I don't remember the exact order, but there's at least 4 or 5 iterations of what has eventually become the same market, just with new additional features.
Yeah, what can attackers do in your environment? No, it's looking to answer that question. So I guess, adversarial exposure validation makes sense, but the whiplash. I can't say it's whiplash. I guess it's every couple of years we change the terms, but there's some fatigue. I'm feeling some fatigue from buzzword changes.
And it really distracts from, oh gosh, this is such a hard topic. Does everybody have 5 hours? It really distracts from what we should be trying to create in our vendor companies. I had a great conversation on this with Nate Burke the other day. He's my former CMO, and we talked a lot about distraction in the cybersecurity vendor community, and how changing these terms, using these buzzwords, updating, like we used to say, next gen, next gen firewall, next gen web gateway, whatever it might be, right? Next gen. But now we're going beyond that and changing the categories and creating new categories, and the nuances between the categories are so small, and we're saying, oh, well, it's because of innovation. No, it really is a next gen. And while I don't necessarily believe next gen is the answer, I think by doing this, go with the market flow, go with, what the terms of the day are, go with whatever words are coming up. It makes it confusing for buyers, first and foremost. And secondly, if we're pouring our effort into rebranding, how much are we focused on the problems we can solve? Because we can all look at a lot of products out there
right?
that are, quote, best of breed or whatever, silly term you want to apply to it, that aren't as effective as they should be. And that should be the sole focus of a vendor company, not we're the next generation of blah, 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 or we're security validation powered by breach and attack simulation. I can barely say that.
Yeah,
like,
I want to
honestly, it's crazy that we're putting effort.
Like some of this stuff that we get sick of, it sticks around because it actually works. So I want to hear your thoughts on this, Tyler. Like, is this something that's I still feel like we have equal myths and stuff that sticks around but annoys us because it actually works on the marketing side of the vendor industry here.
Yeah, this is an interesting discussion, right? Because there is a time and a place for creating or landing in a bucket or creating a new bucket, so to speak. Because I've been involved in that in a previous life. I helped create a new bucket that allowed us to stand out, that was adjacent to, a specific market segment that was ready for disruption. And so I've gone down that path multiple times.
I even know what you're talking about.
Well, actually, I did it twice. Signal Sciences was the one I was referring to. And then we created cyber, what do we call it? That Jupiter one, we called it Cyber Asset Management and Governance, which ended up turning into the chasm market, right? We called it one thing. Gartner shifted it a little bit.
Yeah.
Yep. And that's fine. That's fine. But I've been on the cusp of pushing those things multiple times. And the reality is, if the feature set is big enough, broad enough, or you have the ability to grow into a vision that is big, it can be worthy of a new bucket. But it is a hard road to trod down, right? It is full of potholes and mud.
Every conversation, you got to define it, explain it.
Yep. And it takes years, right? And it has to be correctly named, because if you miss the name, you're dead, right? So there's it's fraught with a lot of terror. And I think a lot of the problem is not every, I think that's generalizing too much, but certainly a fair amount of startup founders, first-time founders, all want to disrupt so badly they want a new bucket. And there's times when it makes sense and there's times when it doesn't, right? And so I think too often founders want the bucket so bad that their disruption, which is really just a feature of a bigger market that's going to get acquired anyways, gets tagged with a term. And I think too many people have fallen down that rat hole of trying to create new buckets or new terms. And then you get all this nasty overlap, when in reality, it's all probably one thing that needed to be acquired into a bigger solution. And so, there's a time and a place, and you can do it appropriately. But most of the time, the vast majority of the time, it really, you probably shouldn't be creating a new acronym.
Yeah. And I deeply want this category to work, because I've seen so many cases where people's controls don't work, their detections don't work. Just stuff where basic checks would tell you, yeah, that code you just wrote, that stuff you just put in production, yeah, it's plugged into the wrong network port, or you got a bit of punctuation. Like there's still a lot of code with detection engineering, and there's a lot you can get wrong. And I want this market to work, because there's so many breaches that happen still today where just everybody's got the monitoring in place, but they don't do this kind of validation work. So, they don't see the attack. In hindsight, they go back and, yeah, the logs were in there, but nobody saw it. And that's kind of, we've pumped so much. We just had a SIM conversation today or earlier today on the show. And And yeah, it's you got to have some kind of feedback loop that tells you whether or not your stuff works.
Yeah, so the question that I have in this particular market, and I'm going to be following this market very, very closely going forward, this and other adjacent markets to this, but
Mhm.
adversarial exposure validation, how is that different than BAS fundamentally, right? And if it's okay, we're taking in some threat data that we didn't have before, or some other feature, um, is it worthy of a reinvention from an acronym perspective, or does it make more sense to say, hey, this is a feature of the old acronym, let's stick with it? I'm not ready to make a call on this particular one, but that's really how you should think about it, right? Is what we've done an iterative step or a truly disruptive to the market step?
Yeah, and everything seems cohesive on the website. So they call it their validation platform. They've got security control validation, attack surface validation, cloud security validation, attack path validation. So they're really leaning on this term validation, which is maybe better than simulation. I can kind of see the shift there. Because simulation suggests we didn't do it in production, or we just pretended to do it versus actually doing it and getting the real results out of it. But then there's companies saying that they do automated pen testing, and it's effectively the same product, and it's a
Yeah.
complete different term.
Yeah, that's exactly where I'm going with this. Is there enough disruption to invent a new term, or should we still be saying, hey, you know what, we're a breach and attack simulation vendor who executes via adversarial exposure validation, right? And kind of take our new term that we've created and use it as a message as opposed to a global position.
Yeah. Then something else that we didn't have time to talk about in our sim conversation earlier today with Graylog, Intezer raises 33 million, a Series C for AI-enabled SOC automation, which is a huge category of products. And what I wanted to discuss with Seth earlier on that, like if this stuff even works, I think a tenth as good as it claims to, I've got to imagine we start seeing sim vendors grabbing up automated SOC automation plays.
Yeah,
Like
that's a
like
highly invested market right now, Adrian. To the point where I was talking to a younger startup that I was advising for a while in this space, and they were having trouble getting funded. And the reason why is they had missed the window. All the major venture capitalists had put their
there's like
money to work. They had all placed their bets already,
yeah,
and so it's an over invested area. You're going to see rapid growth here, most likely. And then the question is, does it fold into SIMs and SOARs? Does it fold into SOC automation? Does it fold into, or does it become, is this one that could become its own market in the sense of making enough revenue in isolation to suck other terms into it? I don't know yet. I don't know. It's definitely a high growth, high potential market though.
I could see it go in two directions. I could see it being a feature of a sim, but I could also see it helping like an MDR firm or an MSSP firm be more efficient, have better margins on labor.
Yeah, and it also will stick a leg into incident response. Forensics markets are naturally adjacent. There's a lot of adjacent markets around this too that could pull it in or be pulled into this as a superset.
Yeah.
My early
And then
thoughts on this, without getting hugely deep, is that it goes the other way. SIM, SOAR, XDR gets folded into SOC automation if we can get the AI right. Because right now the AI, like you said, Adrian, it's unproven, it's untested. We don't have nearly enough data or history to say that we can reliably count on this over X given period. Is that X given period a year, 2 years, 10 years? We probably don't need to get to 10 years before we say if it's right. But I can see a future where all of that, everything that goes in to that rolls up to SOC automation versus everything rolling into SIM or SOAR or XDR or
yeah,
what have you. I mean, it'll be interesting because again, we're going to have to wait a little bit to see where these platforms go. Um, But I could see that. And again, if we're talking about morphing, we've got a few leaders out there who are trying to be, we've got the CrowdStrikes, the Whizzes, the Palos, the Microsofts. They will reinvent themselves every time the wind changes if they need to.
Yeah.
And they could easily do it. They've got the power, they've got the clout.
And as we were talking about earlier, in the SIM conversation, there are a few product categories where that customization tax is higher than with a SIM. The amount of work you have to do to get the product working and producing value in your organization. So that extends to any kind of SOC automation as well. Like maybe it works. If all your design partners are financial services, maybe it works really well for that vertical. But the moment you move into like hyperscale cloud for a startup, like it falls apart, or vice versa, right? I don't know how flexible it's going to be. So that's remains to be seen. Maybe, and we've already interviewed one person from this area. It was Drop Zone AI. Was that who we talked to? A
Yep,
couple
they
months
are
ago?
in the space.
Yep. So yeah, it's going to be a lot of it's kind of wait and see. So I'll wait to monitor closely my Slacks that have vendor feedback channels. All right. We also have EasyDMark, email authentication security. Interesting one. They were founded in 2017, but just now pulling down a Series A. I imagine it was mostly um, uh, bootstrapped in the early days, and maybe now they're just trying to grow it. And then Eclipsium didn't really announce this. Looks like a Series B extension. So this is one of these. If you read the security funded newsletter, sometimes it will link to an SEC document instead of to a press release. It, makes your eyebrows go up a bit. So yeah, looks like they found some additional funding and attached it to their Series B. All right. Yeah. If there are no more comments on that, we can talk about the Swiss uh, equivalent of the U.S. Postal Service buying a cybersecurity company.
Why?
Well, I mean, being Swiss, like they explain it pretty well and pretty clearly. So it sounds like they're kind of like a telecom. So it's kind of like AT&T buying Alien Vault, where they already have enterprise customers and they're looking to upsell with cybersecurity services. At least that's how it sounded to me. But also perhaps going to be using it internally. Dog food.
Yeah, that's interesting. I once, many years ago, worked for the United States Postal Service, and I could never, ever in a million years see this happen in the US. But Switzerland obviously is very, very different.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think you're right. I think it's a situation where, hey, we need a whole lot of it, and we're going to pay a whole ton of money for that. Let's attach it to our services that we're already upselling our enterprise buyers. I have no idea if Swiss Post is a privately held company or government run, which could make a massive difference. But my guess is it's probably privately held, but I'm not sure about that.
They're not. They've decided not to disclose the acquisition price, so maybe it's not public. I don't know what the requirements are there for disclosing stuff.
Yeah, well, I mean, is the Swiss Post government run is the question, right? Or is it a privately held company that's responsible for distribution of mail throughout the country? I have
Well,
no idea
it's
how it
it's
runs over there.
Swiss Post Limited, so I don't know, but that indicates that maybe they're privately held, but I can't
Yeah,
verify that.
Yeah,
because
there's
if
a
it is
foot.
privately held, then it makes sense, right? You're attaching another revenue arm.
Sounds like a subsidiary. There's a footnote that says Swiss Post Cybersecurity Limited, suggesting it is a private business. Comprises the Swiss Post subsidiaries Hack Knowledge and Terra Active, and has operated on the market since July 1st, 2024. So it's brand new, this
Hmm.
subsidiary. It has two other, maybe it launched with two other acquisitions, two other companies here. Interesting. Yeah, we've seen that a lot. There's a German grocery store that owns a bunch of cybersecurity companies, right? We've talked about that. There's MasterCard is buying up cybersecurity companies. We've seen insurance companies buy cybersecurity vendors. So yeah, it's definitely a trend seeing non-tech companies get into the space. All right. A few new companies I wanted to mention here. ES Profiler looks super interesting. It's very early stage, I think pre seed or seed, but they are proposing to get a list of all your vendors and tell you where you have gaps and whether or not you're getting the bang for your buck out of them. A bunch of things that have me just full of questions for them. Okay, where's this data come from? I guess maybe you connect over APIs to these different solutions,
Yep.
but very intriguing
Yep.
and potentially
Yep. This is Nagomi Security does the same thing. That's another vendor that's in this market. But basically, you're right. It's connecting over APIs to all of your security tools that you have, and your infrastructure where possible, and basically ideally mapping the asset infrastructure against the security tool choices in play, and then determining where there might be threat exposures that you don't have tools to cover, right? So, for example, if you tell it you have Office 365 or Gmail, but you don't have any email protection tools, it'll say you have a technology with no protection.
cyber insurance would be interested in this, no?
Yeah, oh yeah, cyber insurance will be all over this. Back to our discussion about bucketing in terms and terminology, Nagomi has taken a somewhat smart play here, and they're using the threat exposure management term and connecting to a technology that already exists. Their lead is a proactive threat exposure management, and then they have some messaging around seamlessly integrating with your existing cybersecurity tools to create a clear map of your security landscape, identifying overlapping controls, critical gaps, etc. Similar value proposition to ES Profiler, but ES Profiler takes a continuous security investment validation standpoint, which is a bit of a twist from their primary position. I'm gonna guess I'm much more intimate with Nagomi than I am with ES Profiler, but I'm going to guess that it's probably a very similar value proposition. And I do like this idea. It is a natural extension from the CASM players. The cyber asset attack surface management players should ideally also have insight into some of this validation of tooling type of offering. And it's a natural, I guess, connection for the asset side to look at. It's a natural connection for the vol management side to look at, and then help them build a program, right? But for all these years, we've always said building a cybersecurity program is something you do over a period of time, 1 year, 2 year, 3 years, but nobody can give you a great roadmap programmatically short of here's how OWASP or NIST or whoever says to build it, right? Follow these check boxes over time. This is a tool to help support you getting there.
So Chasm already has all these connections. Is this a use case that they're going after?
No, well, maybe yes, but not really. My understanding of the Chasm players is that they're not doing much of this yet, although it's certainly a natural extension for them to have gotten into. The interesting thing about the Chasm market is if they know all of your assets and they're able to connect to your security tools, there's all sorts of different value props they can provide, right? And that actually became the difficulty for many Chasm vendors when they hit the trough of disillusionment, I believe it's called. They didn't have a clear grasp on why people were buying their technology for exactly what use cases. And because of that, they tried to do too many use cases too broadly. This could be another great example of something they can provide.
Yeah, very interesting. And then the other one here is Opnova. And this is the latest startup from Sinan Aaron. I'm not sure if I'm saying his name right, but he previously sold FIDE, which was ZTNA, to Barracuda, and Remotium, which was like a Citrix for mobile phones, basically. I think if I recall that correctly, to Avast. So eager to check that out too. I love that When he's talking about it, he's talking about even being complementary to Tynes, which I would think would be a direct competitor from the description of it. So really eager to check out what they're going to build here, and glad to see the automation industry kind of evolving and continuing to polish and get better.
Yeah, if we think about the thread of some of the some of the companies that we've spoken about so far, the workflows and the automations that are probably going to be AI backed, where it's not explicitly said, it's probably AI backed automations and agents and things like that, right? Agentic. That's what I'm looking for. Agentic workflows. I see that as kind of a next wave of innovation to occur in cyber. Now, let's not get overly crazy here and make a bunch of new markets for this. Agentic workflows attached to existing markets are a natural growth spot for existing markets. I'm not sure that they need to sit in their own companies over time.
Yeah. And then we've got a great interview with Wendy Nather on the Decipher channel on topics that are distracting CISOs. Coincidentally and sadly, I don't think anybody involved with making that video or on that video is still employed by Cisco, but it's a good conversation.
Yeah, sorry to see that for Wendy about the Cisco thing, but you know what? Whenever she speaks, whenever she has the time to say something, it's worth listening to.
Yeah, I don't know if they dissolved Decipher or if they're still running it, because a lot of the people I knew that were at Decipher were included in that layoff.
Yeah, there was a massive impact there.
But yeah, she notes still struggling with remote employees, solving that problem that kind of popped up during the pandemic. AI has been very distracting for everyone, I think, including this podcast. We spend an inordinate amount of time talking about AI here, supply chain security, and then breaches and CISO liability. So yeah, certainly CISO liability, I think, has been a big distraction, and rightly so. Like I think the bar, the interest for somebody to become a CISO of a public company, has to be somewhat dampened by all the new regulations and some of the legal stuff that's happened. Yeah, and then a lot of that leads to burnout, which was the final thing in the video. But yeah, good discussion. Wendy always speaking very eloquently on these topics, and interested to see where she goes next. Sure, she's got her pick of places.
Absolutely.
Great essay here from someone I enjoyed reading a while ago, and somehow he fell off my reading list. So I don't remember if I thought he was on Medium before, maybe, and now has a Substack. But Frank Wang, very plainly spoken, has a lot of great hot takes. And this one is titled "Security Has Too Many Tools." And we know that's another big distraction for CISOs and security teams. And he makes some good arguments here. And he also kind of touches on the CISO as an investor in the security tool that's being bought. So a little cyber starts reference there without saying it.
Yeah, I read this one in detail, and the reason why you didn't see a lot more from Frank lately is that he moved a lot of it over to a paid side of his Substack, so he stopped writing some of the free ones. But that being said, he's still a great author, and I love reading his stuff. And his takes aren't this particular one's not super hot in the sense of, like, I think we all know that there's too many tools in cyber and we want a consolidation to occur. And in a general sense, he's saying that. But one of the things that kind of caught my eye in this particular article is his thought process on buy versus build. Mm-hmm. I don't know if I agree with some of the commentary he has in the buy versus build discussion, where basically he's saying stop buying and instead hire human beings to potentially create those systems and workflows necessary to execute what the tool brings to the table. I don't know that that's the right solution to the problem either, because that to me is going to end up with, he says specifically, I'm proposing fewer tools and more headcount. And yeah, sure, that's fine. But at the end of the day, you got to find that sweet spot of the balance of that, right? Because I know lots of the best companies out there that make all their own tools. They build it in house, right? The PayPal's, the Amazons, the Reddits, they build it all in house, but it's not repeatable. It's bespoke, and it requires a lot of funding, resources, both human and cash capital. And I think it's a bit of a distraction to the business, and it becomes more difficult to handle than if you just bought a tool.
Yeah. So the slide, the screenshot of the slide from Travis Peak's talk, "Hard Truths Your CISO Won't Tell You," which he includes in here, and I think inspired this whole write up. One of those things listed is security leader hired builders, and they want to build something, as one of the negative things here. Also, right? So they're also talking about going too far in that other direction. But they
Yeah.
also mentioned, one of the benefits of trying to build it yourself is that you will probably end up understanding better what you need in the product that you end up buying if you do end up going down the buy route.
And I've seen that multiple times in the startups I've done over the past where, early adopters to our product come in and say, yeah, I've been trying to build this for 2 years. I've spent X number of millions of dollars in headcount building this, and it's been a struggle. Here's why. Oh my gosh, you're doing 80% of what we wanted. We're going to buy from you, right? So that's a common thread. And that's why that's why a lot of the early stage cyber companies tap the Reddits, the PayPals of the world, because they've tried to build, more often than not, they've tried to build or have built what you're building as a technology and a tool. And you're taking the overhead and the maintenance and the difficulty of building it away from them ideally. So they become a great design partner.
Yeah. And then we've got a post here from Guillaume Ross, sometimes occasional emergency co-host of this podcast. And when I heard about Apple Intelligence, it didn't even occur to me, like from an enterprise MDM perspective, like you maybe want to turn this off. So very short, straightforward post that just describes, okay, here's the different settings that it's going to have, and here's what it does if you turn it on or off. So pretty cool to know that that's before it's even out, it hasn't even hit anybody's devices yet. There is going to be a way to control that if you're
It's
not
kind of cool.
comfortable with AI on your iPhones.
Yeah, no, it's very cool. And that's one of the things I've, come to learn about built secure from the beginning, right? Is the Apple situation allows that. So
And Guillaume was one of the first to buy a .zip domain, so don't let that scare you off. You can safely click that link. And yes, his blog domain is recyclebin.zip. It's a great domain. Next here, we've got a report, quantum readiness roadmap, what technology leaders need to know about the quantum threat. And we did a whole quantum special, I think it was episode 315, if I'm remembering correctly, where we kind of covered what is a quantum computer? What state are they at? How close are they to breaking encryption and stuff like that? And then with our second interview, interviewed one of the guys who was one of the authors of 3 of the 4 accepted NIST standards, and got all the questions answered about, okay, what kind of cryptography is this replacing, and a lot of information there. And and I did a webcast with a company called earlier this week called Quantum Exchange. Is that the name of it?
mm-hmm.
I've done a lot of webcasts. That was 3 webcasts ago. I've done a lot Quantum Exchange with Vincent Burke. And my main concern here is there's a lot of things in security where leaders will nod and say, yes, this is very important. This is critical, blah, blah, blah. But on my list of critical things, it is number 31. Therefore, it will never get attention. It will never get done. And this will become tech debt 10 years from now. So that is kind of my concern here, that this is, I worked for a SaaS security vendor. I worry that is also, unless you're 100% SaaS, you're a cloud first hypergrowth startup. Again, a lot of this essential stuff, there's just not time or people to tackle it.
Yeah, I mean, what's the saying? If everything's high priority, nothing's high priority, right? I mean, that's essentially what's happening here. If everything's critical, then really nothing's critical. Then you need to look for the ultra critical, right? You got to create a new category up above. And yeah, I have to admit, I know nothing about quantum. It scares the hell out of me. I literally know nothing about it. So for me, it's very easy to be, okay, not a priority because I literally am uneducated on the topic. And I think that the bulk of your CISOs out there will probably have a similar reaction to me. I don't know anything about it. Therefore, it's not in the top 50, right? It's going to be 51.
So the TLDR on this, based on what I've learned, is that it's two types of crypto. It's digital signatures that need to be replaced, and it's private key, public-private key crypto. So setting up TLS, SSL connections, something your web browser does every time you hit a website, that needs to be changed. SSH keys, code signing, software signing, stuff like that. And I think a lot of it's going to happen invisibly behind the scenes. The web browsers we're using right now already have post-quantum encryption algorithms in them. But one of the challenges is that the website you're connecting to, or the email server your email server is connecting to, because all that stuff is negotiated and automated and opportunistic, somebody else also has to fix the crypto on their side as well. Otherwise, you get a mismatch and it's going to use something old.
Yeah, I think that's just a time thing. I think you're exactly right. I mean, look, let's just talk about the rollout of HTTPS, of SSL in general, right? I remember when websites didn't have SSL and everybody just went point to point. And then somebody demonstrated
Chrome was like,
that it
your
was
ranking depends on it. And everybody was like, oh yeah,
right.
that just moved from number 31 to number 1.
Yeah, but practically it wasn't a huge attack vector. Now, yes, I know man in the middle and all that, but you didn't see massive compromises of man in the middle of every website occurring all over the internet,
We've never
right?
seen
And
one,
this is going to be the same thing. This is going to be the same thing. It'll roll out over time. And you've already said, like Chrome, for example, already has post-quantum crypto in it. The other things will just upgrade over time. It'll all happen in the background.
Yeah, except for the stuff, the vendors that never change it out. Like there'll be some of those edge cases. There'll be some funny stuff
and they'll get popped, right? Actually, they won't get popped. What they'll get is some researcher X number of years from now going, oh my gosh, this one has, some retro horrible encryption that's crackable. And then they'll publish it, embarrass them, and get it upgraded that way.
Yeah. They're still using triple des.
Exactly. Who would have thought it?
All right. And our last one here, I don't know if you did you both get a chance to read this?
I read the majority of it. I did not get a chance to watch. I want to watch it because I heard it's pretty amazing.
I don't know if there's a recording of it because it was internal. It's like RSA when they hire somebody like a comedian to speak at the closing keynote for RSA. I don't think they ever record it unless somebody whips out their phone and records it. So I'm not sure if we'll get to see a recording. But a lot of it is quoted in the link that I have here, and it is very quotable.
He usually is.
Yeah, let me cue this up. So the comedian John Mulaney was hired by Salesforce for their Dreamforce conference, which is huge. They have in San Francisco every year, and he just got up on stage and roasted them. And let me try and find my favorite one here. Mulaney shared an anecdote about how he and his son, who is nearly 3, his son is nearly 3, like to play baseball in their front yard. And he tells them, we're just two guys hitting wiffle balls badly and yelling, good job at each other, he said. It's sort of the same energy here at Dreamforce.
I like the one up a little further that says some of the vaguest language ever devised has been used here in the last 3 days. The fact that there are 45,000 trailblazers here couldn't devalue the title anymore.
Yeah, that one's a banger as well. That's and it's the hints of truth at this that like I feel like this crowd probably needed to hear some of these things. There's the serious lack of humility. At the same time, it's interesting. Like Salesforce had this big marketing campaign about not trying to make every single dime off of training on AI with their customers' data. So like I saw that as a positive thing, but yeah, for sure. Like a lot of the things he said are things that people have wished they could say at these conferences to these people. So little bit of what's the German word? Schadenfreude.
Yes. I would, if anybody watching this pod has a video of this, please let us know. I would love to get a chance to actually hear the whole thing top to bottom, because I'm sure it's absolutely hilarious. I also want to know, like, did the audience laugh, or were they like offended? Because I could see some of the audience being like, "Oh, hey, stop! You're being mean to me." I mean, look, he opens with just a massive banger on San Francisco. Let me get this straight. He says, "You're hosting a Future of AI event in a city that has failed humanity so miserably." Like, how many SF natives are like, "Hey, wait a minute, that's my city." So I want to know how they reacted, how the audience reacted.
And then so many of you feel imminently replaceable. He added, "Can AI sit there in a fleece vest? Can AI not go to events and spend all day at a bar?" Shoo, 45 minutes of this. 45 minutes.
Let's go. Somebody give me a link. I want to watch it.
Ooh, yeah. I will keep my eye out for it. If you're listening, you know how to get a copy of that. I would like to watch it. Be interesting to see who they invite next year. And they paid him to be there. He got paid probably pretty well, probably 5 digits for that 45 minutes of just roasting them.
Yeah, I just did a quick Google search. There is definitely some 30 to 45 second clips on TikTok that people had posted. Really? So you can find little cuts of it for sure.
And Stephen Colbert did something kind of similar at RSA a couple years back, but it was much more, I want to say respectful and kind of milder, tongue in cheek. Like he pretended he had started a company called Cloud Fog, and like he was basically like doing marketing for this fake company, and like the marketing was unintelligible and vague, and he made his point really well without like coming out and just insulting the audience directly. But I enjoyed that a lot as well, because
you know what,
sometimes we need to hear hard things.
But I was just going to say, here's my hot take on this thing. We needed it. We needed the slap in the face. Cyber, in particular, AI definitely needs the hype slap. They just need to be slapped around a little bit and put back in their place. So I'm glad he did it.
All right. And with that, that's our stories for today. And thank you so much, Katie, Tyler, for joining me today. It's been a lot of fun. I think I've kept the time down a bit here, something I'm still struggling with on a regular basis. We only had 9 stories, though the funding was kind of 4 and 1. I kind of cheated. But yeah, thanks to everyone watching or listening to this week's episode of Enterprise Security Weekly. Next week, I don't know both of who we're talking to yet, because Monday was down today and I couldn't get the page to load. But I know we're talking to Jason Grace about red teaming generative AI, and I'm really excited about that. And we're going to have another interview that's really exciting also, and another news segment. And I think Tyler will be there, right?
I will. That's the plan.
All right. Thanks, everybody. See you then.